Thank you for all the questions you've been sending in. We've had Linda Ward busily coming up with the answers to your questions. So let me begin with what Linda wanted to know first of all. Oh, you have answers.
Oh, I got the answers.
Sorry, Linda has the answers to the question from Jennifer Price. Here's Jennifer's question. Does Donald Trump lose any rights because of this conviction? For example, and specifically, can he still vote?
Okay, so of course this all depends. A lot of this, but Donald Trump, now a convicted felon. You know, we know that he was a lifelong New Yorker, but is a Florida resident, and so it depends on where you live, really, in the United States, whether you lose the right to vote. In Florida, if you're a convicted felon, you can't vote. But in New York, you only lose the right to vote if you actually go to jail. So if you're convicted out of state, though, Florida defers to those states' rules as to whether or not you can vote. So because of New York's rules, as long as Trump isn't sent to prison, he should be able to vote.
In Florida.
In Florida.
Where he's registered.
In November.
Okay.
For himself.
For himself, exactly. One would assume.
One would assume.
Kevin writes the next question. This is a good one. I like this one. I was listening to an immigration lawyer on this very point. Kevin writes, a Canadian citizen with a criminal record is not free to cross the U.S. border without application and approval each time the border is crossed. What, if any, restrictions apply to a U.S. citizen who is now a convicted felon?
Right. So it really depends on the country that you're trying to get into. And we have a map to show you here. And this was done by World Population Review. Okay. And it's actually really great. You can take a look at the different colors that are going to show up on this map. Do we have the map?
I think we will.
There we go. Red. Those are countries that ban convicted felons. In pink, you can see those are countries that deny convicted felons if they are discovered, but they're not necessarily asking if you're going in. In green, those are the countries that allow convicted felons into the country. So Trump, as you can see, Canada is red. So Trump is technically barred from entering into Canada now that he is a convicted felon. Technically.
Right.
Legal experts say, you know, due to the number of convictions, that he would be barred for at least 5 years after he served his sentence. After that, he would have to apply for what's called a certificate of rehabilitation, or he could apply for a visa. Usually pretty hard to get, but if you're Donald Trump, and depending on his political fortunes.
Right, if he should be the president again.
Right, so he may be able to get access for sort of official duties if he were to be elected again.
Special dispensation as president, perhaps. That's an interesting, you know, hypothetical that we'll have to keep an eye out. Jim was one of the first to get a question in, and this is his. If Trump gets jail time, most people think it's unlikely, but you never know, given his lack of remorse and how disparaging he was of the trial judge. If he gets jail time, does he keep all the Secret Service protection?
Yeah, so there was a lot of questions to the U.S. Secret Service right after the verdict came down about what happens now. So the U.S. Secret Service Chief of Communications responded to these questions, saying that they proceed as usual, unchanged. They're authorized to protect former presidents during their lifetime unless they decline protection. That's according to their official website. But would that apply to a former president if that president were to go to jail? And that's a different situation. And no one really knows for sure because it's never happened before. So experts think if he was to go to jail, it's likely that he would, or unlikely, as you say, that most people think it would be unlikely that he would go to jail. But if he did, it would likely be in a private prison away from other convicts. So that would create a different kind of environment. Some say they think the agency would be required to continue protecting him, even if he were to be in jail, barring a change in policy. So there is room for that as well. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts here. A lot remains to be seen about what happens next in this ongoing saga.